Beneath the peaceful farmlands of America's heartland, something deeply unsettling is happening right now. Over the past several months, scientists have documented more than 200 earthquakes pulsing through the ground beneath the Mississippi River Valley, a region most Americans would never associate with seismic danger. The tremors remain small, barely perceptible at the surface, but collectively, they are telling a chilling story. A story about pressure accumulating deep underground along a fault line powerful enough to reverse the flow of rivers and fundamentally reshape the landscape itself. This is not California, with visible fault scarps and mountain ranges announcing instability. This is small-town America, quiet bridges, modest homes, and endless agricultural fields, resting unknowingly atop one of the most dangerous hidden faults anywhere on the planet. And if history is any guide, the New Madrid fault does not bother with gentle warnings before it unleashes catastrophe. The last time this fault truly awakened, back in the winter of 1811, the ground convulsed so violently that church bells rang spontaneously 1,000 miles away in distant cities. Today, those same geological forces are stirring once again beneath our feet, and leading experts believe the next major earthquake could rival anything ever experienced in the continental United States. The most terrifying part is that when the ground last decided to move here more than 2 centuries ago, it did not stop shaking for months. December 16, 1811, at 2 o'clock in the morning. While frontier settlers across the young nation slept, the earth beneath New Madrid, Missouri, suddenly tore itself apart. Homes lifted clean off their foundations and slammed back down. Massive trees snapped mid-trunk like matchsticks. The Mississippi River, the lifeline of the developing nation, abruptly reversed its flow and began running backward. But that first quake was only the beginning. Over the following 10 weeks, 2 more colossal earthquakes struck the same region, one in late January and another in early February of 1812. Each successive shock proved stronger than the one before. Families wrote terrified accounts of the ground rolling beneath them like ocean waves. Entire forests sank beneath rising mud and water, forming what is now known as Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee. Church bells rang spontaneously in Boston. Brick chimneys collapsed throughout Cincinnati. The shaking was felt as far north as Canada and as far south as the Gulf Coast. Now imagine that same destructive power unleashed on today's modern infrastructure. Memphis plunged into darkness as the power grid shatters. Street. Louis watching its iconic bridges twist like wire sculptures under impossible stress. Interstate highways buckling and fracturing beyond recognition. Seismologists estimate those historical earthquakes ranged between roughly 7.5 and 8.0 in magnitude, rivaling California's most devastating events. But there is one crucial difference that makes New Madrid potentially far more dangerous. The ancient bedrock of the eastern United States carries seismic waves roughly 5 times farther than the fractured geology of the West Coast. One New Madrid earthquake would not devastate a single city. It would violently shake an entire multi-state region at once, and the fault has never truly gone silent. More than 4,000 micro-earthquakes have rattled the zone since modern monitoring began in the 1970s, each one a reminder that pressure is steadily rebuilding deep underground. 2 centuries have passed since those catastrophic events. The land looks peaceful again, dotted with farms, highways, and river towns. But beneath that calm, the same ancient fractures are creaking back to life. And the question haunting geologists now is deeply unsettling. When this fault moves again, and it will move again, will we be ready? Deep beneath the Midwest, the Earth is shifting in ways most people never consider. Unlike California's San Andreas Fault, which marks a visible boundary between tectonic plates, the New Madrid Fault lies buried in the middle of one. It sits deep within the North American plate, making it a geological anomaly. Hundreds of millions of years ago, this part of the continent nearly tore itself apart. A massive rift began forming, stretching from present-day Arkansas toward Illinois. The continent tried to split in two, but the rifting failed, leaving behind a deep scar in the Earth's crust, a zone of weakness hidden far below the surface. For centuries, That scar has been slowly compressed by immense tectonic forces. Pressure builds millimeter by millimeter, year after year. When the crust can no longer absorb the strain, it fractures catastrophically. That is what happened in 1811 and 1812. And scientists believe the same process is happening again now. Seismometers across the Mississippi Valley have recorded thousands of small earthquakes since monitoring began. Most are too weak to feel, but they form a clear pattern. The quakes cluster along the ancient rift system, a silent signal that stress is once again accumulating beneath the heartland. Satellite measurements show subtle ground movement across the region. A few millimeters here, a few millimeters there. The surface shifting like a slow inhale before a violent release. What worries seismologists most is how far the destruction could spread when the next major rupture occurs. In the dense bedrock of the Midwest, seismic waves do not dissipate quickly. They travel efficiently, amplifying as they go. In California, a magnitude 7 earthquake might devastate one metropolitan area. In the New Madrid zone, the same event could shake a dozen major cities across multiple states. That is why scientists describe this fault as a sleeping dragon, buried beneath farmland, concealed under one of America's greatest rivers, yet fully capable of reshaping the nation in a single night. The air hangs still and humid. The Mississippi flows quietly past riverside towns. Then, without warning, the ground begins to move. At first, it is a vibration. Dishes rattle. Windows hum. Then comes the violent jolt. Roads split open. Power lines snap. Bridges sway as if made of rope. This is what a magnitude 7.7 earthquake would look like if it struck the New Madrid zone today. According to federal disaster models, more than 7 states would experience catastrophic shaking at the same time. Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Mississippi, Indiana. Within seconds, downtown Memphis descends into chaos. Brick buildings collapse, gas lines rupture and ignite. Communication networks fail as towers fall. Bridges across the Mississippi fracture, cutting off rescue routes and trapping entire communities. To the north, Street Louis trembles as the Gateway Arch sways several feet side to side. Power plants shut down automatically, as sensors detect ground failure. Across the region, the shaking lasts nearly 4 minutes, an eternity for anyone inside a collapsing structure. Then the aftershocks begin. Thousands of them over weeks and months, some strong enough to topple whatever the main quake spared. Power grids fail across multiple states. Hospitals overflow instantly. The Mississippi River itself becomes unrecognizable. Sand boils erupt. Massive fissures tear along the banks. Mud volcanoes burst as pressurized water surges upward. Experts estimate more than 80,000 people could be killed or seriously injured, with over 2 million left homeless. Economic damage could exceed $300 billion, potentially making it the most expensive natural disaster in American history. And perhaps the cruelest truth is that almost no one would be prepared. The Midwest lacks early warning systems, strict seismic building codes, and realistic evacuation plans. During the earthquakes of 1811 and 1812, witnesses described massive waves surging through the Mississippi River itself, boats thrown onto land, currents reversing direction. If it happened again today, the consequences would be far worse. The river is now lined with cities, fuel depots, chemical plants, and power stations. Commercial ports handle nearly 500 million tons of cargo each year. A massive inland surge could rip through docks, bridges, and levees. Barges could be lifted onto land. Fuel pipelines beneath the riverbed could rupture, igniting fires that spread across the water. And the destruction would not stop there. The saturated soils of the Mississippi Valley are highly prone to liquefaction, where solid ground briefly turns to liquid mud during intense shaking. Entire neighborhoods could vanish into the earth, just as they did 2 centuries ago. Then comes the economic chain reaction. The Mississippi is a national transportation artery. A rupture here would choke supply chains across half the country, stranding food, fuel, and cargo in the geographic heart of America. this would not be a regional disaster. It would ripple through the national economy and even global trade. The new Madrid fault does not activate often, but when it does, the entire nation feels it. From skyscrapers in street, Louis to riverboats on the Mississippi, the shaking will test every assumption about safety in the heartland. The hardest truth is this: we are not ready. Thousands of bridges, pipelines, substations, hospitals, and schools sit atop this fault without meaningful seismic protection. The ground itself could amplify the shaking instead of absorbing it. Scientists are racing to understand when the next rupture will occur. GPS measurements show the crust shifting millimeter by millimeter, building pressure in silence. History tells us that silence does not last forever. The last time this fault broke, the river reversed and the land was permanently changed. If it happens again in our lifetimes, the consequences could rival the worst disasters in United States history, and it could happen without warning. Tomorrow, next year, or decades from now. What would you do if the ground began moving violently beneath you right now? Would your city survive? Would your home remain standing? These are questions no one in the Midwest wants to face, but everyone should. Because this earthquake is not a question of if, it is only a matter of when. And with more than 200 earthquakes already recorded in recent months, that moment may be closer than anyone wants to believe.